Now you can educate me.
It's going to be one of those days where the pictures are going to be hard to take. It's Calvin Castine awaiting the arrival of Gordy Little here. We're at the Champlain Monument in Plattsburgh, and we are shooting into the sky, and it's going to be tough to do, but we'll get the best we can under the circumstances. This is part of the annual Quadra Centennial event. Gordy Little has arrived. He took the long way to get here. We'll let him explain all that. Julie Dowd has arrived with with some company.
Yeah, my daughter had a baby yesterday. I'm the baby.
What a big baby! My goodness, that's a big baby. Just born yesterday.
Just right there.
And here, all the way from Champlain.
No, did you call?
And we're on here, Gordy. You got some splaining to do.
Oh yeah. I always got some splaining to do, Ricky.
I'm pointing the camera right at you.
But you taught me all these years ago. The original Champlain monument is at the church in Champlain, and so that's where I went until I got there, and there were no cars and no people. And I said some very interesting words and called my wife and said, in front of the church. And my wife said, you're supposed to be in Plattsburgh. So we're back again, and actually I did make it back at 7 minutes before noon. This is one of my favorite spots down here. I'm sure you've been here.
I didn't know if you knew it was here.
I knew it was here. And we've been here on many occasions. We love to come down here and just dangle our legs over the side, look over where the Battle of Plattsburgh was fought, and we have at least 4 bricks that are inscribed with our names and names of our family right here around the Champlain Monument. So this is the last significant event. This is the last hurrah for the Quadricentennial, isn't it?
I believe so. Celine was going to have a ceremony at her Samuel D. Champlain History Center in Champlain, but she's postponed that till next year. So this is going to be it. And we started. Well, of course, Hometown Cable will have a couple more things regarding the Quadricentennial, but as far as events goes, this is it. And I think it was probably 2006, certainly no later than 2007 when we did our first one with that stamp cancellation.
We just never know what the weather's going to be like when we do one of these shows. We're approaching the end of September 2009. One day is 75 and the other one is 55. And we're in the low 50s. Yeah, we're in the low 50s now. But at least there's no frost on our roofs this morning. Yes, Keith Hergelo. How are you, Keith? So anyway, it's time to do it again, and these monuments are significant. This one doesn't get enough international publicity. Neither does the first one up at your church in Champlain.
Well, the first one in New York, in the United States. Obviously, Canada had some before us, but first one in the United States was done in 1907 at the church in St. Mary's.
And we were there earlier this year, last year, and other times. But anyway, this is a good spot here. It's kitty corner, if you like that old phrase, to the famous historical Kent DeLord House on Cumberland Avenue in Plattsburgh. They've done a nice job building a gazebo here over the years. It's roughly where the river walk begins. As you can see, many of the paved things here, the small and large bricks with people's names on them. It's a popular place where band concerts, sometimes the parades start down near this area, and old Samuel up there gets a good view of this little corner of Plattsburgh Bay, doesn't he?
Huh? He does, but he doesn't know what's going on behind him in the city. He's staring out at Vermont.
He's looking about what it's like up there. Anyway, it is a nice monument. It was for those people who haven't seen it yet, you're in for a real treat, because we were in Crown Point not too many days ago for a nice ceremony. That was neat, wasn't it?
It was, but here we'll at least get a chance to see the front of the monument. We didn't have that opportunity due to circumstances beyond our control.
Oh, very much beyond our control. Maybe we should get a special hometown cable T-shirts. Maybe that would help. Huh?
I don't know what would do it if our Quadra Centennial hats wouldn't do it. Amazing. We were invited by Celine Paquette, the vice chairman of the, or vice president, whatever her title is, of the New York State version of the Quadra Centennial Committee, to be there for a special photo op at 4:15. And when we tried to cross the security, some young fellow who probably got a badge that morning said, "No, you can't go." And can you contact? No, can't contact anybody. And so we ended up doing a story on the Crown Point monument without seeing it from the front.
No, nor did we get an opportunity to climb it and get that beautiful view of the lake that everybody talked about, nor did we get to take a picture of the Rodin relief on the monument, and so on. It was a good day for us.
It was a great day. We had a lot of good things, but it's just kind of frustrating to go all that far and to have somebody rise to their level of incompetence and not let us through.
Yeah, and I hope people will be tolerant of our, it's not a tirade, it's just these are the facts. We work very hard to bring these various events to you, to do very important interviews, to cover what we think are the essential ingredients that make history here in the North Country, and we cover them sometimes exclusively. I mean, there weren't very many major...
We were the only... Tom Hollick had a video camera there, but that was it. Nobody else in the local, big stations here were there. None of the TV affiliates were there, and except for Tom Hollick at Mountain Lake.
It's nice that Celine Paquette is aware of your contribution, and because of that, my contribution to the Quadricentennial events, and she sent us a nice note thanking us for our efforts toward that end, because 400 years is 400 years.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be a 450th, but the ones that fall on hundreds of years are a little more important, I think, than the ones that fall on the 50 years. So I was there in Champlain on the 350th as a 12-year-old, but I think the 400 year is more important than the 350th, and so on. And the 500 will be more important than the 450th. So we'll let somebody else worry about it than the 450th and the 500th.
We're just trying to make it to 2014, if you don't mind.
Right. But it would have been nice to have some video record of that to pass along to future generations.
Absolutely would. And it bothers me. A lot of things bother me. It bothers me that...
Lumbago bothers me.
Yeah, that too. It bothers me that more people do not get interested in this Quadricentennial and the Quadricentennial events. And it has to do with the fact that people's lives are fractured. They're busy trying to make a living. They're busy doing many other things, and they're not paying attention to our celebration and commemoration of history. So that, for example, that major signature event for the Quadricentennial in Crown Point was only attended by a few hundred people, and you and I both anticipated that a few thousand would be there.
When you figure the number of people who attended the 300th and how they had to
there.
How they had to get there by boat, by train, by stagecoach or whatever. It looks like we're ready to start. Here's Honorable Don Kasperzak. It's just amazing that they could turn out back then, and even the president was able to show up.
We couldn't get the president up here this year. I think we did try, though.
I don't think our president's ever heard of Samuel D. Champlain.
Anyway, the events are ready to begin today. Mayor Don Kasperzak from the city of Plattsburgh is at the podium, and we'll begin very soon now.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is a historic day for the rededication of our wonderful Champlain Monument Park. I want to thank folks over here taking some time off from school, which isn't a bad thing. From Steve. want to thank all of you for being here today, and also the media. I'm glad you all have some long coats on. I wish I had better weather for you, but it's not snowing and it's not raining and it's not 80 and humid, so I guess we're all right. This monument was first dedicated in July of 1912. After countless discussions as to where the Champlain monument was going to be erected, Plattsburgh was really not on the initial list. I'm giving you a little background, of course. I'm only going to be a little humorous about this, and then the serious people behind me will give you more of a historic education here. The first location was at Bluff Point, as they agreed to donate property, but the commission at that time rejected that idea after many complaints that it should be on an island in the lake so that Vermont could view it as well. And I know, I think I have some people from Vermont, and I'm sorry, but I'm really not, that it ended here. The end result, however, was the installation of a lighthouse at Crown Point as the Champlain Monument, with a view of Vermont, so we appeased them, okay, a little bit. However, the northern region at that time of New York complained, and the commission said that they would give the remaining $14,000 for Plattsburgh to have their own monument if they would donate a suitable piece of property, which is where we stand today. So, standing behind me, along with my guests, is the City of Plattsburgh very own Samuel D. Champlain Monument. It's 34 feet high, and at one point in time, and Mr. Herklow didn't measure it, but I think it's about 61 and a half feet from the its highest height from the lake. So there's only one other little piece I want to historically provide with you before I turn this over to some very nice, intelligent, and wonderful people. The Swanton Courier, way back when I just gave you this little story, here's what they had to say. In order to settle all controversy as to the location of the Champlain Monument and smooth out all the wrinkles of rivalry, it may be necessary to mount the marker on a big float that could be towed about the lake during the open season, in that every lake port could be visited on schedule and time, and while en route from place to place, the monument would be an imposing and unique sight, gliding along the lake shore. So I'm not too unhappy that didn't happen, because I wouldn't be standing here today in this historic day. With that being said, and I will be involved in this a little bit in and out, but I would like to now introduce Mr. Robert Booth to start to discuss history and educate all of us.
I walked down the street with the mayor a few minutes ago, and I was able to dispel his opinion that I was here 100 years ago at the time this monument was dedicated. We got that sorted out.
Hear you.
And here.
Well, we don't have a microphone, I'm sorry, so that's why.
Okay. Anyway, I wasn't here 100 years ago. I am here now, and have some things to tell, and as we already know, the story is very scrambled and very scattered, and a little hard to come by. But the history of this monument actually began in Washington, D.C., when interests from Canada, France, Holland, New York City, and all over came to realize that Samuel Champlain needed to be recognized. France took a special interest, as you might expect, and there were aspects of the whole celebration in Crown Point that focused on Champlain in that neighborhood, and the French brought special interest and a special plaque, if you will, that were down there. Our share began in Congress with a bill that was passed by Congress that created a commission to do this work and allocated $50,000 to the New York side and $25,000 to the Vermont side. The New York legislature followed in 1907 by appointing a commission in April 1907. Commissioners were named, and then in 1908 they revised the game plan and eliminated politically elected people from the commission and filled it up to its full capacity of 10 civilians. They were generally scattered from the northern tier, and I think there were representatives in Vermont as well doing the same thing. But in any case, my brother who is here and I had a grandfather, John H. Booth, who was one of the commissioners, and his name appears on the plaque on the back side of this monument. He lived up the street at 7 Cumberland Avenue, where he built his house and where our parents, my brother and I, grew up. Eventually, my parents and my brother's parents renovated a barn that was out back, so that became our homestead. We grew up here. This was our turf. So we know it very well and have for a very long time. I would say our parents as well grew up at 7 Cumberland. So we've been in this for a number of years, although we weren't here 100 years ago. The commissioners took on the job and they thought about things as they were supposed to. They studied, they searched, and they hired artists who were going to create the Indian and the canoe that you see here, and the Champlain figure. So you had stonework and you had bronze work to be done. Architects were named, people from New York City, one of whom, however, was Hugh McClellan, who was from Champlain, retired to Champlain, and was well known in his time up here. The contractors who did a great deal of the work were Booth and Booth brothers from Vermont. No relation. Good thing too, because there's a story behind that. There were also 150 Canadian certified Indians who were employed, who were brought down here when the ceremony was taking place to add true color to it from the native side of it. Along the way, there were serious difficulties. The mayor has alluded to those, and it's possible to imagine what kinds of things were going on, but it did not go very well to begin with, and eventually the committee here took a midway report back to Congress, got the progress they had made, blessed, and this was done in 1911, they were reappointed to run till 1913 to get this job done. The final dedication was done, as said, on July 6, 1912, but that was a dedication of the monument. It actually was dedicated twice. The first was a commemoration, a higher level of dedication, as I understand. That involved President Taft. It involved the ambassadors from several nations, especially France, dignitaries of all levels, and ceremonies that took place beginning in New York City, moving to Crown Point, involving Vermont, and ending up here, including President Taft and a couple of governors and very important people from all levels doing the commemoration in front of a monument that was partly complete. They came from Crown Point in two boats. One was the Ticonderoga, which was active on the lake and was now in Shelburne. The others came on, and this must have been the president and higher dignitaries, came on the yacht of Mr. Witherby, who was the proprietor of the Witherby Sherman Iron Mines down in Port Henry area. They arrived at the dock which served Hotel Champlain. Rough Point it was called. They all unloaded there. They stayed at Hotel Champlain, which had, I think at that time, been completely rebuilt after a fire. It is likely, again, circling back, that our great-grandfather was manager of the hotel at that time. He was up until a point, but he was still alive and active then. So he was in that. Then on July 6th of 1909, the ceremonies here began. All the dignitaries and the president paid a formal visit first to the Catholic summer school. They reviewed a parade of the 5th Infantry Regiment, which was stationed on the old post. They had a tour of the city. They had a reception at Smith Reed's house. He was a very high-powered politician involved in Albany, railroader, iron mines, and his house was right up here at 1 Cumberland Avenue, right by the railroad trestle. So they had the refreshment there. Then they went to luncheon at the Fouquet House, which is across by the railroad station. It's an apartment house now, but that was the hotel in the city at that time. Then they joined ceremonies at the monument here. We believe that they were paraded through town, again led by the military band, and brought here where the speeches began. And there were 6 Congress speeches that were printed in a report, 1 in French. The 7th speech is especially noted in the printed report given by Job E. Hedges in New York City. I have no idea who he was, but the important point that was made was that he spoke without notes and he sparkled with wit, which tells you how these other speeches must have been. my own aunt, our own aunt, Catherine Booth, drew down the flag that was on the back side of the monument and the metal plaque that was there. The plaque was done, some of the stonework was up, but Samuel Champlain on top was a plaquage. It was a plastic image, as I understand it, gilded, and not a true image. The ceremony was a major success. The party broke up. Some of the dignitaries continued into Canada, where they were celebrating Champlain as well. Lesser people got on the boats again and returned to the south and gathered around. It was said that a Canadian military band in full dress attire was a special event for one of the ceremonies that were held here, in addition to the 5th Infantry band as well. The second event, which is a true dedication of the real finished product, happened, as said, on July 6, 1912. It was so as not to spoil the effect of the first commemoration, it was not ballyhooed as much. The dignitaries were there, but they didn't have the complete high titles that the first run did. The speeches were shorter, but the other events were well done, and everybody seems to have had a much better time. By that time, the granite work was finished, the Indian and the canoe were finished, and Samuel D. Champlain stood up there as he is now, in clean bronze. It's a treasure to have it in our city. Now there's another aspect to this that we just sort of stumbled across at the last minute, which guys realize more than I did, but we were part of the 350th anniversary celebration that was held here in 1959. Nobody of the present generation who's holding ceremonies like this was old enough to remember that it took place, and consequently, I'll tell you what little we know about it, but the records of it haven't been brought up, and I guess they're going to be pretty quick, so we can make this thing whole for when we have the 450th review of this. Anyway, 1959, there were speeches, I know. There was music. There was a costumed reenactment of sorts. It's possible that there was some connection with Burlington. There was a flotilla of real birch bark canoes that came down and stopped here. Samuel Champlain was in full regalia in one of the canoes, and he dismounted and came out on the steps there. The Indians were authentically dressed, and whether they were really Indians or not, they did the paddling. They had appropriate grease paint and costuming, and there were, again, speeches and music, but they seemed to be more fun at that time. Back into the cycle again, our oldest daughter, who was then age 10, unveiled the monument that was christened down behind there, that triangular thing. And then there's a plaque here on this face of the monument that tells of that ceremony. The whole operation, as I recall it, that took place for the 350th was led by a very distinguished and active former professor of the Plattsburgh College, post-war college, Dr. L. Newton Hayes. He was a curator of the Centennial House at the time. He was a dynamo, and I think that he was very instrumental in bringing this whole 350th celebration together. In any case, what we need to do now is to fill up the generation gap and get our stories in order, because, to say the very least, in the beginning, they started out with a great deal of trouble. It's sort of a wonder, but a wonderful thing that we are at the point we are with this fantastic monument still in good condition. Thanks very much. I hope it's been helpful to pull the pieces together so far.
Well, with that history lesson, it shouldn't be Plattsburgh, it should be Boothburg. Think we can do that? Thank you very much. Our next speaker is a very good friend of all of ours, John Kruger, who is the director at the Kent Lord House, which is right across the street. If you young folks don't understand that, or you don't recognize that, you need to visit over there. And your teachers will tell you to do that. Mr. Kruger, you're on here. John?
Thank you very much. Well, for better or worse, the mayor and Mr. Booth have already stolen most of my thunder. So I guess my two claims to fame will be, I'm short and I have a loud voice. Historical context helps us to better appreciate a particular point in time, as we've been reminded many times during the past several months. This summer marked the 400th anniversary of Champlain's arrival at the lake. 100 years ago, on the evening of July 6, 1909, President William Howard Taft, congressional and state leaders, the governors of New York and Vermont, and guests from France, England, and Canada arrived at the Hotel Champlain on Bluff Point to celebrate the 300th anniversary of Champlain's arrival. On July 7th, as Bob mentioned, the president spoke at the Catholic Summer School of America, then had lunch down the street at Smith Weed's house at 1 Cumberland Avenue. After lunch and a grand parade, President Taft reviewed the troops on the Oval of the Plattsburgh Barracks, and speeches were made by all of the special guests. An evening banquet was held at the Hotel Champlain for the President, dignitaries, and 500 invited guests. 97 years ago, on July 9, 1912, Plattsburgh's Champlain Memorial Monument, designed by architect Hugh McClellan of Champlain, was dedicated. Festivities began that morning with another dress parade at the barracks. People then gathered here at Delord's Point for the afternoon dedication ceremony. Delord's Point was named for Henry Delord, Champlain's fellow Frenchman, born in Nîmes in the summer of 1764. Delord and his wife Betsy purchased a modest home across the street in 1810, enlarged it, and lived there for 3 generations. Their granddaughter, Frances Delord Webb Hall, was the last family member to live in the house. Fanny Hall undoubtedly attended the ceremony when the statue of Champlain was unveiled by Catherine Booth, daughter of John Booth, who lived 2 doors down the street. The flag that was draped over this monument had flown on the Eiffel Tower in Paris on the 4th of July, 1900. 50 years ago, 350th anniversary celebrations were held throughout the Champlain Valley. Fanny Hall wasn't alive to attend. She had died in 1913, and with a big assist from William Minor, her house had been turned into a museum. L. Newton Hayes, my predecessor as director, played an important role in the 1959 celebrations. Fanny Hall was represented in another way as well. One of her Webb relatives, Electra Webb, founder of the Shelburne Museum, was a member of the Federal Hudson Champlain Commission. Despite threatening weather, probably very similar to today's, an estimated 12,000 people. Look around you, ladies and gentlemen, and count the crowd. An estimated 12,000 people attended festival events in Plattsburgh. The colorful flotilla of canoes landed here on the afternoon of July 19th. Speeches marked the occasion, including one by John Pell, chairman of the Federal Hudson Champlain Celebration Commission, and my son and daughter's maternal great-grandfather. I'm trying to stay up with the booths. Music was provided by the Plattsburgh High School Band, and a reception for dignitaries and guests followed at the Witherell Hotel. Historical context is important. Although the world has changed since 1959, Delord's Point looks much as it did then, much as it looked in 1912. The Kent Delord House stands proudly, the product of a Franco-American success story and a reflection of the values that have made the North Country great. Support this enduring cultural resource. Celebrate Champlain. Get to know the Delord family. Enjoy Delord's Point. Thank you.
Our next guest speaker is a very good friend of mine. She is probably responsible the most for the Quadra Centennial events and the success in the North Country. I had the pleasure to serve with her when I was the executive director, the initial one, by the way, for the Quadra Centennial. I was very impatient and I left after 14 months. Celine Paquette probably didn't want me to go, but then I don't know whether I made a mistake and I came back here and ran for mayor. So I'm not sure what I did right or wrong, but I had the pleasure of working with this wonderful person. I truly feel that all these successful events that have happened here in the last year, she is directly involved and responsible with everyone that also has helped. So I would like to introduce Celine Paquette.
150th. I don't know if I'll be around to answer the phone. First, I want to applaud the Plattsburgh Quad Committee that has worked so hard this year and sponsored many events. Mayor Casper Zach, Jen LaFontaine, and the chair of the City Committee, and Christy Kagan. So if we would give them applause for their There are many others, but if I start mentioning names, I will forget someone. On behalf of the New York State's Hudson Fulton Champlain Quadra Centennial Commission, we lovingly call it the Quad, it is a great pleasure to be here today to bring greetings. I am especially pleased to see members of the Booth family here. The Honorable John Booth served on the Tercentenary Commission of 1909 and was responsible for this beautiful monument. Would you believe they had money left over from the Crown Point Monument? Things have changed. I have to tell you that I've been attending several quadricentennial events in the last few months, and all have enjoyed exceptionally wonderful weather, except maybe one. So I think Samuel D. Champlain, we have no rain today. He's either approving or you have a very good weather committee. This event today culminates a wonderful year of a variety of events, music and programs on both sides of Lake Champlain, commemorating Samuel D. Champlain. As someone said at the 1912 dedication, and I quote, "It is a great thing to have a man's memory remain 300 years without tarnish. Well, it has been 400 years, and we are still discovering great traits and saying great things about this man. We know that his life was a record with few equals. He was a man of vision, and it is so appropriate that we have a monument to him in the North Country. We feel his heritage in this beautiful North Country." President Taft at Ticonderoga on July 6, 1909 said, "Champlain was a man whom all nations can honor. He is not a man with respect to whose history you have to pass over something in silence. All his life will bear the closest examination." Champlain's visit in July 1609 was the beginning of recorded history in New York State. He was the first white man to set foot within the borders of what has become the Empire State. As we know, when he saw this beautiful lake, he named it for himself, the only place in North America that he named after himself. So we can say he had an eye for beauty. As Vice Chair of the New York Quad Commission, I encourage communities in the Champlain Valley to have legacy events. Some of you have heard me say this before. It's great to have parties, parades, and fireworks. They all help us celebrate anniversaries. However, when they are over, not much remains. With this beautiful monument that you are rededicating today, you are leaving a legacy. 50 years or 100 years from now, when Champlain is again commemorated, people will look back on today and reflect on this event and the words that were spoken here today. As David Hackett Fisher said in his book, Champlain's Dream, the literature of Champlain is like a century plant. It blooms every 100 years, then fades and blooms. Let's all resolve today to remember and honor Champlain, to keep his name and memory out there, and to continue the momentum to honor him that began in 2009. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Celine. Our last speaker has become a very good friend of mine this year. Jennifer LaFontaine is the chair of the City Quadricentennial Committee. She volunteered. I sometimes wonder if that was in her best interest, but it certainly was in our best interest. She's learned an awful lot about Champlain. She has been directly involved with all of our events, and it's a pleasure for me to introduce Jennifer to all of you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a loudspeaker naturally, so hopefully everybody will be able to hear me. I, as many people here, have tried to imagine journeying with Champlain, enduring the daily living conditions that were vastly unlike those they were accustomed. the unending work, the elements, and most of all, the unknown. And I cannot. Because today we live in a time when having to drive our vehicles to the grocery store at 10 o'clock at night is a bother. A time when a drafty house is uncomfortable, and having a vegetable garden a relaxing hobby. And I am no less than astounded that anyone was not only able to survive from day to day 400 years ago, but as Samuel D. Champlain did, cross the Atlantic 27 times. As we are now feeling the changing of the seasons, even though I don't think we had much of a summer this year, I can barely get a glimpse into the challenges that were encountered. The resolve of the people, the commitment was, in every sense of the word, remarkable. Though I do believe, as it has only been 400 years, that we are not so unlike our founders. Inside all of us must be the strength to endure, the resolution to overcome, and the determination to do what we may think the impossible. But above all that, gratitude. I am today grateful for those who preserve our history. In doing so, they remind us who we are as individuals and as members of this community. This great monument, as well as other historical markers, also remind us of who we are. And in visiting them from time to time, we perhaps become inspired to take on challenges that we never thought were possible, even in this modern day of conveniences. As the chair of the City of Plattsburgh Quadra Centennial events, I've spent time with many, many people of this community who care deeply for this city, this community, and the preservation of our history. It has been an honor and a privilege to have met and worked with you. And so, with awe, respect, and admiration for our past and our present community, I say thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Before closing, I just would like to say it's a privilege and an honor to be the mayor of the city of Plattsburgh, and especially so on a day as historically important as this rededication. I would like to thank a number of people before we close, and I'm looking at two very good friends from Vermont, Bill Howland and Jim Brannigan from the Lake Champlain Basin Program. Without your help, we wouldn't be here today. The North Country Garden Landscaping with Frank Pravada did an outstanding job throughout the summer here. Plattsburgh Memorials obviously was involved with Mr. Champlain himself behind me. The Riverwalk Committee made an unbelievable contribution, and I want to thank you all very much for this. Mr. Kevin Farrington and the engineering staff, directly involved and very helpful. Mr. Brody in Public Works and his wonderful staff have done an outstanding job as well here to maintain this wonderful park, which I think is underutilized, and I hope now that people will understand how beautiful and important it is. Jennifer, thank you. Celine, thank you very much for all your help and your efforts. Keith Urkelo's back there. Thank you, sir. Our community development staff is right over there. They were involved in this as well. Christy Kagan, thank you very much. And we will miss you. This is her last official event. She's going to Washington, D.C. to bigger and better things. When we first started some of these events and discussions, Clinton Community College was just unbelievable as you stepped up. And I want to thank you very, very much. Your events were tremendous to start things on. They really were. There were so many other people. Seton Catholic isn't here, but I just wanted to mention that we invited a number of school groups, and I was so pleased to see them here. Mr. Booth is absolutely right with all our other speakers. And John as well, and Celine. There's a history that somehow there's a gap, and we need to reach out to the younger generation so they can carry on this forward. And I'm actually thinking of my two sons who probably really don't care about this too much either, so we have to go home and drill that into them occasionally. But I want to thank you all for being here. We're not 12,000 people, but I think we're pretty strong in our attendance today. And I have to honestly tell you that it's a privilege to be here, and I'm so pleased with this park and the way that it has changed, and we are going to continue to do the things we need to do to improve it. So thank you very much for being here today, everybody.
And to hear, you know, it's nice to have 50, 75 people and a few school children here in 2009, but it should have been more. It should have been that wonderful ceremony in Crown Point.
That
Should have
was.
had 5,000 people.
We would have loved to have had that many. Yes, yes.
Well, we try.
Yes,
we all try,
yes,
and I
we
know
did.
you tried so hard this year.
But we had a good crowd. It was well attended, and the people who were there were very, very happy. So
It was
Well
an
placed.
event we would not have missed,
No,
and we've
it
talked
was-
about it
yeah.
so often. Just so important to do those things.
It
So
was.
this is the last significant Quadricentennial event.
Yeah,
You said
there's
you have
some
to speak tomorrow.
yes, there's some small ones happening in Essex County, and I will not be having the dedication of the Samuel D. Champlain History Center until early next year.
I heard
early
you
summer.
postponed it into the
Yes,
the Quad +1.
That's right. That's right. We got to keep the Champlain thing going. You know.
But you know what? I think this is a good opportunity to talk about that, because this is a personal thing with you. This
That's right.
wonderful old building in Champlain.
right.
If people haven't visited it, they should. And this has
Absolutely.
been your labor of love.
My pet project. You're
Tell
right.
me a little bit about that itself, for people who didn't see our earlier interview when Calvin and I
Well,
were
I
there.
purchased the building in 2001. It was extremely vandalized, you know, windows broken and the whole bit. So I had a wonderful contractor and a wonderful architect. And we started by putting heat in the building before we could do the sheetrock.
Oh, yes.
And downstairs didn't have a floor, so it now has a floor. The upstairs is entirely complete. Downstairs, we're right now staining and painting, and hope to do the carpeting this winter.
Now you, as some of our viewers know, but all of them don't, you have taken a personal interest in Mr. Samuel de Champlain
Yes,
for a lot of your adult life.
I'm in love with Samuel de Champlain. Yes, he's a.
How did that happen? Just because
I
of the
don't know.
connection?
No, well, it's nice to live in Champlain. We have this town named after this wonderful man. But I started reading about the man and his exceptional qualities, and someone I deeply admired for his humanism and his caring of others and diversity and many reasons. Yeah.
And he was brilliant in so many ways that we're only beginning to realize.
Absolutely. He was a cartographer. He was a diplomat. He was a fundraiser way back when. Yes, he was a lot of things.
So anyway, this has been a real quest for you that will not end with the end of the Quadricentennial.
Oh no,
for
I
sure.
now have the Samuel D. Champlain History Center where I can devote more time. Yes.
And isn't that nice? Have you been able to receive any grants or state or federal funding for that project?
I haven't, because it's privately owned until I.
Is that the way it goes?
Yeah,
Oh,
until it
my
becomes a non-for-profit. You know, I'm it.
Well, you've done a magnificent job with that. We love the
Thank you.
building. We love all those historical buildings.
Thank you.
If those walls would talk, we'd have a whole other program,
You're
wouldn't
so
they?
right. 1880, the building was built, and the second story was added in 1905. So
Isn't that cool?
yeah, it's a
This
lot of
monument
history.
is fine, and I'm so glad that Mayor Don Kasperdak talked about this park and what a splendid place it is.
Beautiful,
I mentioned at the beginning of the program how many wonderful moments I've spent here with my family. We have our family's represented in at least 4 of the bricks here as part of the river walk that I know about. But isn't it a great spot just to come and reflect?
It is beautiful, and you can't see this from the street because of the slope, but it's worthwhile stopping by and visiting.
And once again, we have to reiterate the fact that many young people just haven't found the handle to history, and that's why the speakers today, yourself included, talked about closing that gap. It's so important for us to indoctrinate our kids about the history and this historic end of town, Cumberland Avenue.
Absolutely.
Some pretty neat digs down here.
Yes, you're
Not
so
the
right.
least of which is the Kent DeLord House, which, as John said, is right across the street. John's a valuable asset here. And even though you don't remember him, L. Newton Hayes was a dear friend of mine.
Okay.
And when I first came to town, I was fortunate enough to be very interested in history wherever I was. And I called L. Newton Hayes and asked if I could have a private tour of the Kent DeLord House. He invited me there. And to listen to the man talk, he became mesmerized, and so did anybody around him, because he lived the history of this area, every pore in his body. So that's the tradition that I'm familiar with from 1961 when I first arrived in town. So were there any other events in Plattsburgh besides this one during the quad year?
Well, we had Clinton Community College had the marvelous 3
Just
days.
terrific,
They had
terrific.
marvelous.
That was kind of a
here,
neat
yeah,
event.
yeah, and with the Lois McClure was here also at Wilcox Dock, yes.
In the beginning, I sound like I'm reading the Bible. In the beginning, we actually had a little trepidation about how we would compete with the Hudson Valley because of their part in the Quadra Centennial. And they had major events down there. I don't know if you got to any of them this year, did you?
They had major events. Of course, they have more people and there's more to do and more museums. But I have to say the Champlain Valley could compete with anyone.
We held our own, did we really?
We did. The communities have just, without money and without help from downstate, the communities just honored Samuel D. Champlain this year in so many ways. We have so many wonderful legacies. We have historical markers that have been dedicated up and down here. Beekmantown had 7. Peru has a couple. Shazy had 1. We've had events, of course, the Clinton Community College. We had a wonderful art exhibit at Plattsburgh State for a month with the artists from Montreal. In fact, 2 of those paintings are now hanging in the Executive Mansion in Albany. We had the New York State History Conference here. We have this wonderful mural on the wall of the Government Center. So we have legacies. We can really point to, we have a medal that was dedicated by the Senate as the official medal of the quad year. We have the wonderful calendar David Patrick put out, the Quadra Centennial calendar. So there's a lot to show for our year.
He's working on 2010 already.
Yes, he is. In fact, I'm proofreading it right now.
Are you really? You know, you brought up another important point that we have to underline every time Calvin pushes the on button on that camera, and that is the volunteer spirit in our part of the country has been fantastic.
Absolutely.
And during the quad celebrations, if people hadn't donated their time and their efforts, it never could have happened.
Yeah, that's right. We have a beautiful new monument to Champlain and Ticonderoga.
Yeah.
That's also very lovely. So there's a lot going on, or has gone on. So I'm very proud. In fact, I can stand up to the Hudson. I don't know if they can show so many legacy projects.
I love it.
Yes.
And now it may be time for a long winter's nap.
You're right. You're right.
Who knows what next year will bring?
Yes,
but this has been a hard road for you, but one that you have to look back on with great pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I've been on the commission for 7 years, and I'm very proud of the work we've done. Yes, it's been hard. Yes, but
We're proud of you too. Thanks so much for spending all your time and for spending a couple minutes with us.
well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Have a great day,
You
Celine.
too. Thank you.
Mayor Don Kasperzak. How are you, Donnie?
Gordy, I'm privileged and pleased to be here with you and Calvin and everybody else. What a special day in our history.
You know, I just mentioned to Celine, and I have to talk about it every time I come down to this end of town. This is a resource that I wish I could just carry a sign all over New York State saying, come to Plattsburgh, we got the neatest place down here.
It really is, and it's underutilized, and I'm not saying underappreciated, but I can tell you it's not well known, and I think after people watch what you're doing today and Calvin and people reading about this, that they'll understand what a wonderful place it is just to visit, to fish, to have lunch. The gazebo's over there, just to take a little walk and stroll, and it is going to be better known, and I'm very pleased and proud of that.
I like to stand in historic places and just reflect on what it might have been. And today I could easily think about Samuel de Champlain and his party paddling down past here in this lake. Every time I come down here, I can easily imagine what it was like on that morning of September 11th, 1814, when the most significant battle in our naval history took place right off of this point.
Yes.
And for both occasions, for the earlier commemoration and the dedication of this monument, I can picture this in my mind. The history is exuding from every clump of ground here.
Well, it is, and you have really explained and described some of the vivid experiences that a lot of people think about. But I can tell you honestly, a lot of people just say that, but I know you and I truly look out here and believe that as well. And there is no substitute for our history up here in the North Country. No place in this country is any richer than we are, and when you describe those types of things, it is absolutely true, because those things did happen, number one, but number two, the way you describe them are absolutely the way that happened as well. So I think we're very fortunate to be here and to take advantage of it, and I wish more people would take advantage of the whole area in the location.
Is an historic part of town. There were things that were here long ago that haven't even been revealed yet. Early cemeteries down here. Smith Weed himself and the wonderful gardens that you look at the old photographs and postcards.
Oh, I've got a lot of them.
Smith Weed had up there.
Yes,
absolutely. And then we remember Sid Spiegel and the old Humpy Bridge that was taken down in the middle of the night.
It was.
And there's a lot of that history connected with all my years in the media.
That's right.
Here in the North Country, and you grew up in the midst of all of this.
Well, I did, and I'm glad you mentioned the bridge, because I haven't thought about it in a little while, because as mayor, obviously, it's been a little different a way to look at that. It's not as high, but that bridge was special. It was fun, by the way, as a youngster.
Humpy, as
it was unbelievable. And when they did make a change, I'm trying to be nice here because I am in government here. It was quick. It was probably very controversial, and it really changed the scope of this entire area in the city. And I think at that time this plot of property probably wasn't as developed as it is now, but I can tell you're absolutely right. This is a special place as well.
It is. It's just terrific. When you were talking about the bridge, I can remember we didn't have much to entertain us when I had a lot of kids and no money. So we go over that bridge about 30 miles an hour, and my kids would call it the Tick-a-Belly.
Well, there were 6 of us in our family, as you know, and you know my father and my mother when she was alive well, and we kind of had the same memories of it, and it was true. It was really something that even my 2 boys that are 20 and 22 just they don't understand and they never experienced.
The word legacy has been used a lot today, and it's so important. At this end of town, Cumberland Avenue wends its way past Wilcox Dock.
Yes.
And, talk about the history of the Wilcox family and Helen Ionelli.
That's right.
Her ancestors at Wilcox, the wonderful things that have happened at Wilcox down over there.
A lot of wonderful things have happened there. And you mentioned all these families, and I'm not sure people that will be watching us here, I know a lot of people that follow you guys, both of you, understand those names and remember them. But I hope the younger people are listening as well, because those are the historic names that they should either research or appreciate, because we wouldn't be having any of this discussion without any of these folks.
We joke about the Booth family.
Yes.
They were that involved, and they've been involved in everything.
There's no doubt about it, and I was teasing, as you know, earlier about Boothburg, but and I know those family members very, very well, and they're great people, but they did add to our history significantly, just like a lot of other people, just like you. And by the way, I mean that sincerely. So you have a large family. Calvin's up here in the North Country with his family. We were a little latecomers. The Casper's Act didn't get here until 1956, but we're very pleased to be here, but we don't have the history you do, but I really appreciate everything that you all do.
We love to do it. On the other end of Cumberland Avenue is the Georgia Pacific Mill, the site of the old Lozier Boat Works, and the campus that built those famous Lozier automobiles in the early part of the 20th century. So this town's got a lot going for it.
Well, I think also if you look at the other end of town, which I know you both really support, that historic museum campus it brings a lot of this to light too. And if you get it in one place and you visit those places, it's the Champlain Valley Transportation Museum and a Lozier itself, there's so much history, and my hope is, and you mentioned legacy earlier, that the young folks learn from this, take it, and then share it with their children. And, you know, I'm not going to be around forever, and I hope our kids take that as well and share it with their friends and relatives too.
Donnie, great to have you here, my friend.
It's a pleasure, and you're a good friend of mine, both of you, and keep up the great work, because everybody appreciates it.
We'll try to get enough sleep to carry that out for
Yes,
you.
sir.
Have a great day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Yeah, we're mobile. Hometown Cable's got wheels. We just moved a little bit across town, across that humpy bridge and up around the Clinton County Government Center for a very good reason. Just as a historical aside, in 1961, when I came to work in Plattsburgh on the 4th of July, I worked at radio station WEAV that was located almost in this exact same spot where I'm standing now. It was at 38 Court Street, and that's where I parked my car to go to work there. And later, when I left the radio business in 1997, I came to work as a victim's advocate at the Clinton County Department of Probation. And guess where I parked my car? In the same spot. Now we're back again to talk about this Quadra Centennial mural, which is just really an absolute wonderful display of the human spirit, the history of the North Country, and what kids can do if you get them inspired about art and history. So we're going to show you a good long look at this mural, and Calvin and I will chat about it.
First of all, Gordy, we got to point out that when this was unveiled, we were both kind of tied up and we weren't able to be here. But I'm kind of impressed, and I'm hoping that the frost won't get behind this and do damage over the winter. But
I don't know if they've thought about it, but it is it's a mosaic and a mural at the same time. It involves many, many pieces and involved hundreds of North Country children who each did their own part. It starts with the First Nations, goes to 1609, all the way up to the present time. Shows a depiction of Samuel de Champlain in his birch bark canoe, and all the little tiny, I was going to call them squares, but they're odd-shaped pieces of the mural that are in place here. And it is tremendously impressive to those who come and take a look at it. If you weren't here for the unveiling, and if you haven't been to this end of town for a little while, I would urge you to come here and do so. There's so much to see. Calvin, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of tiny pieces, each showing something having to do with history.
To design this, to make this puzzle work, where you get a piece out to a certain kid and tell them to put a certain piece on there, and then they must have numbered them. I think you couldn't put this together.
I don't know how they did it. There's a depiction of the early wildlife, which is wonderful, right down to various animal tracks. The great blue heron, which is such an integral part of our North Country, a bear with a fish in its mouth, the Native Americans growing their various crops and working in the old days, involved in what they did. And then there are actual pictures that kids made of people who are significant. The native chief, the native women, later on the people who are significant in our history are surrounding the map itself in the middle. So we've got fur trading, we've got every kind of wildlife you can imagine. We've got exchanging gifts like blankets and wampum between the Native Americans and obviously the man himself. And look at Samuel de Champlain, what he's got in his hand right here. That's the astrolabe. Isn't that amazing?
That's his GPS, as Celine has explained to us.
That's exactly right. And he's heading through the bulrushes.
It starts at First Nations and it goes to 1609, and we just evolve. It's a chronology here. It's going to take us right up through the. So we're going to kind of just ease our way through here if people will stick with us.
We've got lots of animals, lots of crops. We've got mills along the rivers that are so important. We've got spinning wheels. We've got weaving looms. I'm looking at ox carts with plows. I'm looking at various shelters, which are absolutely significant. apple trees, log cabins, hunting in the woods, even the pileated or pileated woodpecker up on the top.
You know, and we get to 1776, and there's a person that people who aren't from the area or people who know little about our local history will wonder
what's he doing
in heck is Benedict Arnold doing in a place of honor. That, of course, has got to be Valcour Island that they're depicting there.
Sure.
And what a hero he was until he ended up becoming a traitor. But he certainly was a hero and did so much to help us win that Revolutionary War.
It's amazing. We're talking about mills. We're talking about the making of potash. We're talking about iron mines, the smelting of iron, the tanning of hides, the lumbering business. Look at it. Isn't this fantastic? Look at the size of that load of wood. Plus, we're in a spot now around 1776 where you can start to see more of those significant historical names.
And each town has a name. Each town is you see Beekman Town has Benjamin Moores, and each town has a different name. Dannemora, Phineas Hooker. So each town is represented in our county.
I love it. And then the women who helped settle Clinton County. Isn't that terrific? Just fantastic. And all of this was done by kids with the tutelage of some very bright adults and teachers. Look at harvesting ice down here. Oh, you're looking way up above, but harvesting ice down there. I don't think they left anything out, do you?
I would doubt it. Amazing amount of thought went into this, and I don't think I really appreciated it till I came here. And I would invite anybody who's here renewing their license or their registration to come out on this side in the parking lot area. I usually, if I'm renewing my license or registration, I usually park on the street. But after you do that, walk through the doors over there and come out here and take a look at this.
This is great, and the map itself, you see a lot of relief in there. A lot of the towns we're so familiar with, and dates are listed along with the Clinton County seal for March 7th, 1788. And the best part of it is, Calvin, those little kids who are involved in this could come back in 50 years and say, this is what I did when I was,
show their children and their grandchildren.
Absolutely. So they made history too. The canal boats, the rafts going down the lake, the three-masted ships.
Well, we're into 1814 here.
Oh, we're got. So now we got. Of course, we got lots of. We got churches. We got forts. We got. That's beautiful. That.
You got McDonough. You got.
Macomb or Macomb.
I'm sticking with Macomb.
Okay. And lots of different things involved. Battles. The battle lines are drawn on both sides. Stone buildings, cannon, lighthouses, Israel Green Tavern. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful?
Each of these little panels just fit together so nice.
One says love and peace. Another one says honor. One says care. There's another one that says care up there. There's so many different things depicted, and look at the geese flying overhead. Isn't that fantastic? It took a long time from conception to conclusion, and that's why another reason it's so impressed when I say they're in relief. Look at the ship with the gun ports and the gun sticking right out of the side to make it look that much more realistic.
I just hope that the moisture doesn't get in there and that frost doesn't split those. That's beautiful.
Oh boy, we got 13 stars on the flag. It's hard to drink it all in. You have to take a little time to look at it. You think maybe that's Clinton Correctional Facility? That might be...
Yeah, the date is 1840, and that would probably be the looking at that time period.
It's really good. We're looking at churches and schools and houses, buildings. I don't know if that's the Fouquet house or not that we heard mentioned in our earlier celebration at the rededication of the Champlain Monument or not. Just so many things to look out and drink in, and there is the famous privy right there with the half moon in it. I just spent some time in Juliet, Georgia a few weeks ago as we were recording this in late September, and I saw one of those behind the bushes, and I got up close, and it had a little sign right above the door that said Juliet Police Station. I got a huge kick out of that.
We see the blast furnaces. We see a one-room schoolhouse here, a big one-room schoolhouse. There's so much of our history is depicted here.
You know, the kids
Really impressed.
The kids looked at paintings. They read books. They got the milkman delivering. I love the cow. There's a beautiful cow right there. Some of them are very, very, very interesting. This one, I just love it. Those are just great, and many of the buildings here are meant to depict actual buildings that exist today. And of course, the mills along the rivers were a tremendous part of the industry.
Yeah, we see some slaves here with the Underground Railroad.
Oh yes.
Yeah, between 1850 and 1860, we see that.
And Quakers,
Yeah.
who were very much a part of the history and settling of many parts of this area. Look at this up here, isn't it? That's beautiful, isn't it?
Well, that I think would be Underground Railroad.
I think so.
Following
the stars and such a great part of.
gourd. Following the drinking gourd, it says. So head north.
Yep, isn't that amazing? There's the train station. This looks essentially the same today as it did back then.
And the mining, the ore cars.
Ores. The water spout for the railroad. Churches, printing presses. Plattsburgh Republican. How about that, huh?
Yeah. And then we got some military folks here that would be the
and the old stone
military
barracks.
training camp.
Sure. The old stone barracks are there.
Yeah.
Horse nails
1916,
in Keysville. And those buildings are still very much in existence today.
Yeah, it takes us up to 1880.
Look at the Schuyler Falls Band. Isn't that great?
How'd they get top billing like that?
I just don't know. And a very big one, too.
Marv must have a lot of pull.
You think so? Maybe the kids, I don't know which kids did that, so I would hate to give some credit.
And steamboat here, we got a steamboat.
Oh, just wonderful. Railroads, a steamboat,
River End
the
Canal.
old county court, the churches. It's and look at up here. Isn't that a beautiful, brilliant sun, huh?
So I definitely recommend this to anybody viewing it. Stop in here at the Government Center and appreciate this.
I think it should be a tourist attraction all by itself.
It should be.
Yeah.
It really should be.
I don't know of any other murals like this that were done, especially a mosaic mural that was done like this anywhere in the state for the Quadra Centennial. So I think we are unique. Certainly the way it was put together is absolutely unique. And so let's invite people to come up here and see this. Let's invite people while we have the opportunity to study the history of the area in which they live. Talk to your kids around the supper table or the breakfast table about their own ancestors. Get involved in the genealogy of your family. Trace their steps from whatever old country they might have come from here. As we're recording this, I'm planning a trip to Ireland in October to trace the steps where my ancestors trod in Letterkenny and sailing from Derry during the terrible, infamous potato famine in 1848. History is wonderful. And through the eye in Calvin's camera and the wonderful descriptions we get from the people we interview and the places we go to, we try to bring history alive for you and your grandparents and your youngsters as well. We thank you for watching this program. We thank you for all of your suggestions, your information, and from your monetary support in any way you can find a way to supply it. Thank you for watching on the internet. And always keep smiling, pay attention to history and the North Country in all ways. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.